People who have disappeared to start a new life as a new person. What was it like and do you regret doing it? Serious. I have an uncle who attempted suicide 4 times and failed. For his 5th. People were pleading with him to try anything else. I went to a park with him and smoked a joint and he told me he was planning on killing himself again. We sat in silence and jokingly, I suggested he just start over. If his life was bad enough to end, then he could end his life that he's living and just starting a new one. In maybe Arizona or some faraway sheet. 2 months later I heard he left out of state and got a new phone and maybe a new name. I found an abandoned container with a thank you note and 3 perfect joints a couple weeks after that. I'm sure he's doing okay. I didn't have to fake my death. But I was an active heroin addict in my old life, so I guess it's possible that people think I'm dead or in jail. Shit, I got lucky not to be. When I got clean I also moved a few hundred miles and cut ties with everyone except my family. It's much easier to stay clean living somewhere without a ton of history of drug use. No reminders. I also am in a new college. Overall it's pretty good. I have a quiet and productive life. Not much socially, but I have people I can call if I feel the urge to not be alone. Loneliness is an issue, but I try to remember that it's better than living like I used to and isolating myself with erratic behavior. So overall I'm pretty content with the whole fresh start deal. Faked a big move and cut ties with family and friends. I live about 20 miles from my old home and kept my job. It has been 2 years and my anonymity remains intact. Happy life without the drugs, drama and abuse. Still keep in contact with my little brother. But that's it. Everybody thinks I now live in Russia. Edit. Details. I didn't do anything drastic like change a name or fake a death. I merely chose to cut out the terrible people in my life. My father abused me growing up, including sexually molesting me. While coming to terms with this as a young adult, I tried to heal myself. After leaving the mental hospital he mocked me. That was when I saw the light and decided to cut him out. A year or 2 after that my mom decided to uninvite me to Christmas. And B, kicked me out the day before the holiday when she realized I didn't intend to go. I left. She changed the locks. I decided to leave totally. And merely left town. Blocking everyone there on my FB. Didn't want my whereabouts getting back to my family. I live within an hour's distance. Never had a run-in since. No regrets. For me things are a little different, but I guess I will still tell the story. 4 years ago after I finished high school I started to go to college. But then it came financial crisis at my family. Had to leave college. I couldn't get a job because the country where I live sucks. And then my parents started telling me that I had to work not just to stay. What they didn't know that I was trying so hard to find a job but it was impossible. After a couple of months a friend of mine who lives in Finland came back home and we talked. He told me, why don't you come with me there and have new start? I was like, hell yeah, right away. So I went to Finland. Over there my friend had a construction company, so I started working immediately. The payment was great, I was making good money. I also started getting lessons to learn Finnish. Man, that language is so hard. Things were looking bright until one night. It was Saturday night and we went to this party with some girls and my friend having a nice time. In a moment I lost my friend and one of the girls told me he was outside. When I went outside 3 guys were beating the shit out of him. So I grabbed a bottle of beer and hit one in the head and then started punching the other one. So the fight stopped, we were both fine but little bruised. The police came and took me to the station. Since I still wasn't a Finnish resident they sent me back home and not allowing me to enter their country for 5 years. I dropped everything and left without telling anyone where I was going. I hardly packed anything. Just grabbed what I needed and left the state. I go by a different name now and I have no regrets. I was in a terrible place and now I'm so much happier. I think the only difficult thing is how to figure out who I am now. I spent so much time living for the people around me that I didn't even know who I was. Do I even really like to bowl? Is this really how I want to dress? But I get to relearn and re-explore myself slowly and it's a wonderful journey. My story is definitely less extreme than some on here, but it is probably more realistic for those of you considering a big change. And I didn't have to completely restart my life. I got married about 15 years ago and was on track for medical school. We were excited about our prospects, but we wanted our lives to be an adventure. The expectation was that we would move to Boston and work 80 hours a week. It would have given us both strong careers. So I went to medical school in Ireland. She got a job in Dublin. I worked hard through medical school, but our weekends were in Paris, Rome, Budapest, Istanbul, Amsterdam, Barcelona, Venice, Porto, Tunis, Athens, Oslo, Berlin, and so many more. We could never have afforded even 2 of these trips from the States. But from Dublin they were dirt cheap. Our target airfare was £15 each way. We lost a lot of friends in those 6 years, but not the good ones. And goddamn, it was an adventure. I moved from Oregon to Ohio about 4 years ago without really telling anyone. A lot of people probably assumed I'd disappeared, but really just left suddenly. I did it because I was sick of the way my life was going and didn't really see any light ahead. After taking off and traveling across the country, I learned a few things. Met a couple awesome people. Made some amazing memories. But all in all, things were pretty much the same. I realized that I could go wherever I want, but it was always gonna be me that arrived. I think now that the only really to change your life is to change yourself. I know that sounds cliche, but that's what I learned. Like they say, get on a plane in California an asshole. Get off a plane in New York an asshole. Close your Facebook account and you'll be like disappeared. And relieved. I did this in March and it really puts your friendships in a different perspective. I now have about 5 close friends who still keep in touch after I deleted it. Everyone else seemed to trickle out of my life. My experience is more recent. I left about a month ago. No real responsibilities or debts and meager savings. Packed a bag one night and hit the road the next morning. Life is good so far. I've met some great people. I've stepped way outside of my comfort zone. I've got a new job and, finally, a place to live. And I've never been happier. There are people I miss, of course, but I know I'm doing the right thing. It's kind of a scary time in my life right now, but I know I'll be a happier and healthier person in the long run. I'm not a person who changed my life, but I have a uncle who did this who I never met. I'm Latino. So I learned my uncle was disgusted at being from a Latino family. He hated his heritage, the Spanish language, and I believe he never liked my family. His name was Angelo, but he changed it legally to Angel, and his last name too was something more European sounding than his Latino last name. Even before I was born. I learned that he moved somewhere to Florida. Closed to communications with my family. And as far as I know owns a small business out there. That's as far as I know about him. It's weird to know that he did all that based off of being disgraced at his heritage. Then again, there can be details about him as well as my family, don't know. I moved halfway across the world to get away from my bad reputation. It is refreshing and fantastic to have a clean slate. But it is really challenging. My parents, siblings and best friends are 6,000 plus miles away, and I had to forge a new life from scratch with no help. I was 17 when I did this BTW. One day I hope to move back there to start over again. But as of now it's great. I didn't fake my death or anything extreme like that. I just moved. I did lie to a lot of people about where I was actually going and for how long. I moved from the US to Central Europe. In the US, I was addicted to opiates and miserable. My addiction came with too many friends. I worked for awful people that underpaid me for the job I was doing. I couldn't quit because I had to pay for my tiny studio that was $800 a month. I had to get away from it all. I knew I never would if I didn't just GTFO. My friend living in Europe came to visit one summer and saw how miserable everything was and suggested I come back with them when they returned. with the help of my mother. I was on a plane 1 month later. I've never gone back. I found an amazing job right away. The cost of living here is very low and I live in one of the UNESCO protected most beautiful cities in the world. Fast forward a few years. I've now met the love of my life. We are moving into a house and expecting our first child in the beginning of next year. I've never been so happy. I really did it all from nothing. You just have to go. I didn't set out to disappear. And indeed, still have contact with 1 or 2 people from a life and lifestyle I left behind. After the breakup of a long-term relationship, I decided I had had enough of living where I was living and doing what I was doing. So I moved to a different city. Most of my previous friends remained friends with my ex and I felt a bit betrayed by that, considering he cheated on me etc. So I didn't keep up contact with 99% of them. Some didn't even realize I had gone, so it was no loss. My family knew where I was, but we have never really been close-knit. So phone calls and visits dropped to about twice a year. Starting a new life was awesome. I was able to focus on myself and figure out who I was. I had adventures and made friends who liked me for me and not for who I was in a relationship with. My name changed slightly. Somehow my new friends preferred calling me by an abbreviated version of my name and it stuck. Even I introduce myself as that now. Years later I kind of did it again. But this time for love. I met a man on the internet and fell in love and moved to the other side of the world to marry him. I didn't disappear that time though. Everyone knew where I was. I moved to US for a PhD. I'm from Asia. One of the best decisions ever. I always wanted to do it. It's not rainbows all the way, but I learned what working hard and working smart is. Also, I love the culture here. The no bullshit say what you feel kind of thing. This gave me a temporary fresh start, though I don't recommend it to most. When I was much younger, I ran away to New York City. It was on my bucket list and I decided I didn't have much else to live for. So I left home with $80 and a plane ticket. A few hours later I found myself on Fulton Street. I met random, previously unknown students to room with at Pace University, and got a job the next day 20 blocks away at Energy Smoothie. It was an enlightening time, if not reckless. I mostly remember the kindness of the people I met. Felix, the cop who gave me $10 to eat for a day. Johnny, the garage operator who talked with me for an hour when I was lonely. The woman with a Batman belt who gave me an under-the-table job, even though I was underqualified and underage. In Meg, my faith in innate human kindness was restored, as was my hope to continue. TL, Doctor, I ran away to Nick and found new life. I didn't fake my death. I just knew I needed to leave. I was 20 and wasting my money and time in college, with no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I had friends but no one that I actually cared about. And definitely no one who cared about me. One spring I got struck by inspiration to move. I don't know what got into me, as I'd lived in the same state my whole life. I just put my cats and my clothes in my rust bucket of a car and drove out west. Started on the east coast. When I hit the west coast, I stopped and found a coffee shop so I could use the internet. The next day I moved in with a roommate I found on Craigslist. No deposit required since her last roommate had just disappeared. I had $700 to my name which I used to pay for my first month of rent and some food. I found a job before rent was due the next month. Now I've been here 6 years and life couldn't get better. I don't regret a thing. I never finished college. I'm much thinner, happier, financially better than ever, started my own business, and I have great fulfilling relationships. Would do again. My fiance and I grew up in the same hometown and went to the same high school. He was really ridiculously popular and so was his sister, who was in my grade. And I wasn't. I was the girl raised in a barn, basically. But I had a huge crush on him and his sister and all her ducking hunt friends made fun of me and made my life hell. So after he got back from the Marines we started dating, much to their dismay, and they were amazed that I turned into this gorgeous freak after HS, their words, and we moved in together like right away because I was the girl raised in a barn and he wanted to give me a better life than that. So here we are. 3.5 hours away and 2 years later. Engaged. With a guinea pig, so it's real serious, and his sister's friends are so pissed that I got their man. Neither of us have Facebook or dumb shit like that, and I only keep in touch with a friend from Massachusetts and he only keeps in touch with his aunt and a few select friends of his who like me too. Nobody knows a damn thing about me. TL. DR. Revenge on high school itches. Guinea pigs. Was with my ex for 3+ years. I don't want to get into details, but he was abusive and I didn't know how to get out. So I went to the travel agent, booked a one-way ticket from Australia to the UK and was gone. Through my relationship, friends, hometown, belongings, passed and job away. Dropped out of uni and moved with about $1,800 in my back pocket. Best decision I have ever made. Never looked back. Will never go back. Until I had moved I didn't even realize how anxious and depressed I was. How much I was not myself. Thank God I moved. I can't tell you how good it was to wake up in the morning and feel happy. I lived poor and worked my ass off. But I was happy. I was myself again. No one judging me or making fun of me or telling me that I didn't fit in. Thank you Bristol, you saved my life. Felt good to vent this. I did a very small scale version of this to get away from my ex. We were exes at the time. But he was still abusive. And I was afraid for my physical safety. I pretended like I moved away, but in reality couch hopped between supportive friends for about a month. I cut the communication cord between me and him plus all his friends in about 3 minutes at 3 AM to reduce the chances anyone he knew would be able to spy for him. It should be noted the girl he dated before me actually had to move to Montana and change her name in order to get away from him. Our mutual acquaintances didn't think this was a pertinent detail until I started the fake move.